Hi, welcome to episode 55 of the American Tributaries podcast, where to break out of the bubbles we've all been living in, we're using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country, kind of like a 21st century Lewis and Clark journey. I'm your host, Michael Whidden, here in Brooklyn, New York, and thank you for joining me in this exploration of America. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by John Ceriello, who has been with the FDNY since the late 1980s, I believe, and is currently a captain at Rescue One in Midtown Manhattan. I should thank our daughters for bringing us together. So thank you to Miranda and Lucia. But John, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing? And could you share a bit of your story?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm hoping this is not going to be as arduous as Lewis and Clark endeavor across the middle of our country when there were no roads. But I'm sure it won't be. So you mean my story in regards to the FDNY or my story in life?
Well, I guess did I state it correctly that you've been in FDNY since the late
In
80s?
1988, February 18th, 1988. It's something that every New York City fireman always remembers is the date you were appointed, because that appointment date sets everything up, like in your seniority as well as your retirement and whatnot. That date means an awful lot. So we all kind of remember it. It was the first class in 1988. It was a provisional class, which meant there were only 61 members in the class, which is a very, very small class for the New York City Fire Department. Normally, right now, they're trying to get at least 300 in a given class. Maybe on average, they're like 150 to 200, I would guess, if I were to look at it. But there were provisional classes. There were, even back then, there were issues with diversity and female firefighters having lawsuits about how we bring people into the New York City Fire Department. So things that are going on these days have been going on for the last 35 years. So it's
Oh,
been a
wow.
long time.
Did
So,
you always want to be? Were you as a kid? Did you want to be a firefighter?
I've been asked that question. It's funny. I think if I think back of my life and my education and everything, I think my dad was in the service station industry. He owned a service station on Long Island, pumping gas and repairing cars and everything. So I think my dream was to be designing cars in Detroit, but it took a different route, and maybe my lack of, let's say, the mastery of mathematics might have hindered my engineering career. So anyway, but my dad was also a volunteer firefighter in town. So I have a fond memories of Christmas parties and parades and 4th of July parades and, him coming back from a fire, smelling of smoke, or, seeing him at the firehouse, things like that. So there was always very fond memories of all that. And then I think, sometime in high school, I remember someone talking about, well, you can actually get paid to do that. And I'm really like, I didn't, never really dawned on me prior to that. And so when I was 19, I took the test, the written test, and then a little bit later took the physical, and then you're put on a list. And depending on how they need firefighters, it took roughly 5 years to finally be hired in,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
in in February of '88. Yeah, very, very competitive test. I scored very high, but I think I missed 100 by one question wrong, and that one question cost you like 2.5 years. So
Wow.
that's how competitive it is. And to this day, I don't know what that question was. You never get a chance to go back over the test. But yeah, so early on, I definitely thought it was something of interest to me. I do remember a particular training session with the volunteers at Bethpage, which is out on Long Island, the middle of Long Island. It's where Nassau County trains all of its volunteer firefighters. And whatever the fire was, it was, I believe, the taxpayer was, they produced a fire in there with um, wood pallets and diesel fuel and things like that. So it's a nasty situation. It's not a pleasant situation at all. And myself and another member performed quite well, quite admirably. And I remember, the instructors pointing out, nice job. Like you didn't back up and you kept moving forward. And I just remember that in my head, like that was a very satisfying moment, and that kind of solidified, I think, my track. So again, I read the night that I received my letter of being accepted into the academy was my dad's birthday party. He was his birthday was January 29th, 1929, and but whatever. I guess this was beginning of 1988, and we're at dinner at a restaurant, and he pulls the letter out of his jacket, and he says, looks at me and says, "This is for you. I wish it was me." And he handed me the letter that I got
Wow.
into the academy. So it was something he would have loved to do. However, he had a very successful career. He had a fantastic business, and he it wasn't something that one needed to do, nor could have done if he was going to run the business. You know what I mean, with his brother. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how that all started. So
Wow. When you became once you were a firefighter, was it what you had thought it was going to be?
wow. There's no way. Uh, no, it was everything and better. I think the camaraderie, um, the knowledge that I learned. I'd been a volunteer for 7 years. I really knew nothing. And now you're thrust into the professional fire service where these firemen are professional firemen. They are, some of them were kind of like me where we were professionals in Brooklyn, but we were also volunteers on the outside. But then there was others that, no, when they were at work, they were the consummate professionals. And when they were not at work, they were not. They lived in Brooklyn or Queens or wherever they lived, where there are no volunteer fire departments. They're very foreign to them. Um, but regardless of all of that, uh, they were all on one given mission, which was, fighting fires and serving the people of Brooklyn. I was lucky enough to be sent to a busy area of Brooklyn, engine 225 and ladder 107, right in the heart of East New York, Brooklyn. So I was very quickly thrust into, a lot of runs and a lot of fires. Is it the busiest firehouse in New York City? No, but it's right there, and I work with some phenomenal individuals. And not only that, you become very close, and you become really really good friends. That I was lucky that particular house had a whole string of people coming to the house over like a 5 year period. There was a big turnover, and that brought a lot of young firemen together all in one shot. You know what I mean? So that it was fantastic. It was a great time to be a fireman.
What's like? I mean, I guess I'm sure there's not like a typical day, but like, what's the kind of day that you usually kind of prepared for? Is it really always anything, or like
No,
what's an
no,
average
there's
day
there's
like?
a definite routine in every firehouse. You always get to work an hour early at least. Many of the individuals who are traveling for, like, I ride my bicycle to work now, so which I've been riding. I've been riding my bike ever since I moved into Brooklyn. So, although I did it a few times from Roslyn, where I grew up, to 225, and it was extremely dangerous. It wasn't a good idea. Just there weren't bike lanes or any of that stuff. But now it's really easy. But the guys that do live 2 hours away, let's say, they'll come in early just because it beats the traffic. But you always get there an hour early, and there's usually breakfast cooked, and you try to have a cup of coffee and you try to cook and you get yourself ready for the day. I mean, I always shave. I always have. Just something I do. That's your preparation. I always wear the uniform. You put a uniform on, and then you relieve whoever that is to let them go home early. That's really how the day usually starts. And then from there, we clean everyone. Every People don't realize it, but the New York City Fire Department, we clean the firehouse. There are no maids. There's no one there. You have to make all the beds. You've got to clean the firehouse. You've got to clean the bathrooms. You've got to clean the kitchen. You've got to clean the apparatus. Everything gets cleaned every day. Some things get focused on depending on what your schedule is, but that happens every day. And then you're going to get runs during that time too. So that could take a short period of time or a longer period of time. Then there's always tools to be checked. In engine companies, there are certain tools to be checked. In truck companies, there are certain tools to be checked. In squad companies, there are certain tools. And then in rescue companies, there are certain tools. Speaking for the rescue, the members probably for at minimum of 2 hours after committee work are checking tools of the day, and that rotates each day. There's a different set of tools to be done.
Mhm.
Some take a little longer, some take a little shorter. But so you're talking from 9 a.m. when our tour starts, right? We have two tours, 9 to 1800, 6 o'clock at night, and then 1800 to 9 in the morning. Those are the two shifts. So you're the day tour. You're probably busy right up until noon, and if you have runs in between there or catch a fire, then that's going to be past that before you ever have a moment to sit down to have a cup of coffee. That's just how it goes. You have a cup early, and then you're into this whole gig, and then maybe sometime in the afternoon you might have a chance to sit down. And then, of course, there's going to be a drill period somewhere in there, and those drills can be hands-on, and we can be out of the firehouse doing something. Yesterday, we were out lowering a mannequin off of a ledge right by just above 57th Street on the west side, where the group of Trump buildings used to be. They're no longer Trump buildings. That was divested to the Chinese government, but we won't get into that. So when we were there, it was, you crowd gathers, but we were just drilling outside because it's something different and new. But that could be done in the firehouse, or we could just do some sort of classroom style drill where we'll talk about a previous fire or something like that and lessons learned. Right. So really your whole day is filled with something again, and you're out and about. Other companies might be doing building inspection. Or you may get something from our headquarters at 9 Metro Tech in Brooklyn that a particular building has to be looked at for a dangerous condition. Bam, you got to do that. Other engine companies are out checking hydrants. People don't realize that too. DEP doesn't check the hydrants. They fix them for us, but we have to check every hydrant in the city of New York. So there's a schedule that engine
How many
companies go out.
hydrants are there?
Oh God, I don't even know.
A lot.
It's funny. No, there was a number. I'd have to think about it. It's tens of thousands of hydrants. I mean, every 250 to 300 feet in the city of New York, there should be a fire hydrant.
Okay,
That's
too
a
many.
lot.
Whenever I'm looking for parking.
Well, there you go. Some people have suggested that we allow parking in it. You're actually allowed. You're allowed to stand on a hydrant, so you can pull into a hydrant and park there, but you have to stay behind the wheel.
Yeah, that's what I do.
That's the idea behind that. And if emergency vehicle approaches with lights on, you're supposed to come off the hydrant.
Yeah.
So,
when I'm doing my Uber driving for the family, that's my parking spot.
It can be right. Well, no, it works for that. Some have suggested to get rid of them. That would be a terrible idea.
Yeah. So have you ever had a car in the way of a fire hydrant, and did you have to just bust through the window, or what do you do?
Well, no, you put the hose around the car. Busting through the windows is done simply because it was on the movie Backdraft years ago, and chauffeurs love doing it. It's a terrible idea. It's much easier to just put the hose over the top of the car or around the car. It's nonsense, but it looks cool, so I guess people do it. I would never do that. I would never damage someone's car, even if they're being stupid enough to park on a hydrant. I would never do that. Unnecessary destruction of anything. We just had a fire the other night. The chief wanted a company to get upstairs above where the fire was. It was a small fire. It wasn't a big deal. And the building was a doctor's office, and the front door were these huge glass doors, really thick. And I'm like, I'm not breaking these glass doors. So I said to the chief, Chief, we're having difficulty getting in. He goes, John, I don't want to leave until someone gets upstairs. I said, all right. So we ended up pulling the electrical box off the wall and getting in behind it and then connecting the two wires, which released the magnet. And then we were able to get in and then get the lock box and then get into the next door and everything. But the idea is to do no harm, when you don't need to. And it wasn't an emergency. If that was a fire roaring and the fire was communicating to the floor above, that glass door would have been gone in 2 seconds. But
right.
If that's not the case, then you look for other means of getting up there.
When was the first time? Do you remember your first time when you were like, "Oh, this is really dangerous"? Was it? Is everyone dangerous? Or
you were thrust into it pretty quickly, But again, we kind of feed off of each other, So if all those guys are going in, I guess I'm going in. You know what I mean? It's one of those type of things, You kind of feed, and as being in an engine company, as in your initial years, you're kind of always together as a group. with the officer, nozzle, backup, control. So you're always kind of like doing all your thing together, which again, you feed off of each other. But,
Mm.
going into well, to a civilian would seem lunacy, in front of you when you have a charge hand line, or you have the knowledge of how to operate at a fire where the main thing is you got to read the smoke, you got to read the building, and then you got to get in there and you got to isolate yourself as soon as you can. That's what it's all about. It's controlling doors and windows and whatnot. And you can affect the fire in a way that makes it safer for you to operate. Obviously putting water on the fire, that the fire never likes that. So you put water on it, it calms it down, and then you're able to do what you need to do. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember my first fire that I can recall, but I do remember I was detailed to another company for 30 days, and it was a fire bombing of a frame building in the heart of East New York, and a number of people were killed at the fire, civilians. That was the first multi civilian death I remember. There was one gentleman who jumped out of the second floor window and was, impaled on a fence, which is pretty horrible. But what was interesting about that was, I thought of going to assist the individual, and the officer said no, and I didn't understand why. What it turns out is that person is relatively safe. They're out of the fire building. There's other people who are up in the building. They're still in danger. So somebody will get to him, but our job, our position is somewhere else in the second floor of that building. On entry, the front door, when they went to force it because of the fire behind it, it was weakened and the whole thing came off the hinges and just laid flat. And later, as we're coming down out of the second floor, there was an individual, there was a gentleman behind that door, and he was trying to get out and he couldn't, and was killed right in that position. So
Oh wow.
that was a pretty horrific situation, and you know, we went to a lot of really horrible. Down where that company was, the Belt Parkway wasn't far, and Linden Boulevard wasn't far, and Flatlands Avenue wasn't far, Fountain Avenue. There were a lot of really horrific car accidents all along there. So you dealt with that on a regular basis, but again, our job is pretty simple. It's whatever we go to, someone's having the worst day of their life, and which we try to make it a little bit better. Through either EMS intervention or water on the fire intervention or rescue intervention. That's it.
Right. I mean, wow. I mean, there must be. Um, does it get frustrating? Like, in other words, like I would think that like what you're seeing is you're seeing some of the most, like you said, probably the worst day of somebody's life or over and over again. And does it get frustrating in terms of like, do you see these things and you're usually like, why like this was such a stupid thing to do, or is it like or is it something? Because like I know when I was a lawyer and you learn about like torts and you learn about accidents, I became a lot more sensitive to things because I'm like, you know what, there's so many things where it's like just one little thing can make such a big difference, and things seem preventable, but there seems to be sometimes there's not enough, I don't know if it's a responsibility, but awareness of how a simple thing can really lead to something catastrophic. So since you're always seeing those things over and over again, does it get on you at all to just see things where it's like, God, what, another car crash? Like why does this happen? Or are
Yeah,
you able
well,
to kind of remove
it
yourself?
does, but I mean, I think what our country's going through these days, right? You have to realize words like regulations are not dirty words. And when it comes to fire prevention, it's imperative that a major city such as us um, employ regulations. So, for instance, the outside seating, dining, right? The all these restaurants took a major hit during COVID. I believe it was the right thing to do. Let's try to get them outside. Okay, great. But then once you started enclosing them, you were defeating the purpose. But then it gave a restaurant who had 20 seats, now 40 seats, to try to recoup the money they lost during COVID. Great idea. Love it. Right. Now the weather gets colder and we want to heat them. Okay, we'll heat them with propane. Great. Anybody know how dangerous a propane heater is? Now, it's not dangerous when it's just sitting there by itself and it's all good. No, what's dangerous is propane is heavier than air. When
Mm.
propane leaks, where does it go? Okay, so a cylinder's going to leak. The people who are hooking these up and disconnecting and whatever you're going to do, great. But when it leaks, it's going to go down into basements. It's going to go down into sewers. It's going to go places where we in the fire service know it's going to catch a pilot somewhere and it's going to go boom. And when it goes boom, it's really, really bad. So that's our concern. So we said no propane, and the restaurateurs went crazy. They started hooking up electric. Well, recently they kind of flipped on that and they said they're allowed to have propane. The problem we see is, okay, so you're allowed like two 20-pound cylinders. A 20-pound cylinder blows up. It's horrific. But let's say that's a rarity. Great. You really think restaurant the owners are only going to have two of them on site? No. They're going to have two or three or six or eight to replace these when they go low. They're
Right,
not going to
right.
keep calling every time they go. Where do you think they're going to store them?
Yeah,
Out
exactly.
on the street? No, they're going to store them in their basement. And I just told you that propane's heavy in there. There's the problem. So that would be one. On a broader scale, sprinklers. Every building in the city of New York should be sprinklered. And it's not. And there's tens of thousands that are not. So since 1999, every multiple dwelling, which is 3 families or more, has to be fully sprinkled. Okay, great. We have tens of thousands of buildings that are older than that. All the project buildings where most of our fires are, where most of our civilians die, where most of our firefighters die, are not sprinkled. We just had a fire at 59th and 5th Avenue on the 18th floor. It was the Asian gentleman who just got arrested for bilking people out of $1 billion or whatever. Well, he gets arrested in the morning and his apartment goes on fire 4 hours later. Something's going on then. The ATF is trying to figure out what it was. Something weird. But anyway, I believe the flat was somewhere around, I don't know, maybe 8,000 square foot. A huge, huge apartment. And the building was built in 1915. Unsprinkled. Yet that flat, whatever it went for, 10 million, $20 million, whatever the number was, the monthly service charge for that flat was $150,000. $150,000. Now, every apartment in that building, you're telling me the building owner couldn't put some money aside and sprinkle the whole building? That's the crazy stuff that goes on. So that's the more frustrating stuff in the fire service. Every building should be sprinkled. Now, there'd be some firemen that maybe don't want to hear that because fires would go down. But you got to remember, fires going down means civilians don't die and firefighters don't die.
Yeah.
That
Are
would be
things
good.
better than when you were? What's a rookie in the
Probationary
first year?
firefighter.
You're what?
A probationary
Okay.
firefighter is what we
So
call
when
them.
you were a probationary firefighter, was it safer? Like, is there big differences between then and now?
I'd say it's probably about the same. And in fact, if we were to, although in 1988 we were already in the synthetic world, right? Probably the seat you're sitting on right now, I know the one I'm sitting on has polyurethane foam in it, so that already existed in the world. But I think it has exponentially gotten worse. There's, the rise of the cheap Asian product, the rise of the Walmart nation or the IKEA nation has created all these really cheap plastic furniture pieces, or appliances, but they're all plastic now. So I think that has gotten worse, which leads to a fire that is much more volatile when it does burn. Number two, in the last 5 or so years, the lithium battery fire has gone incredibly increased in frequency and severity. It's insane what's going on. So so I would say it's gotten worse.
Really? Wow.
Our gear has gotten better, but again, remember, a human being is inside the gear, so it doesn't matter how good our gear is. You're inside it.
Yeah.
So you can only take so much punishment.
When you're in a fire, like, how much of the heat do you feel? I mean, and how insulated are you?
Yeah,
Another
we're
way of asking that.
extremely insulated, but there's so many factors that go into all of that. How clean your gear is, how you dress and put your gear on is really important. That there's no gaps to skin. 131 degrees, you get a second-degree burn on your skin. That's it. So we can go into more hostile environments than that, but only for a short period of time. And like I said before, it's all about reading and understanding what the fire is going to do and then getting doors closed to protect yourself. That's really the key to it, and getting water on the fire.
Is the doors closed? Why does that matter?
So the door closed does two things. It denies air to the fire that's burning, and it protects you from a flow path. So it's huge, and a simple, even a cheap hollow core door lasts for minutes in a raging fire. It's incredible how well it works.
Okay, never thought of
And
that.
that's why, there's another public service announcement you don't hear as much as you should. Close the door. So if you're leaving any fire in any room anywhere, close the door if you can. If you see something start, just get the door shut. And that
Mhm,
fire will never get a chance to really get going because it needs air. It doesn't matter what the fuel load is. It needs air to get going.
mhm. Wow. Huh? So close windows, close doors.
Right. Close windows, close doors. It's
Huh,
tough to get to a
simple.
window, but the
Yeah.
door is very easy.
Okay. How negligent am I that I have probably a small little fire extinguisher in my closet that I've never tested, and I've never even I haven't. It's probably about 15 years old.
So pull it out.
Uh,
Make sure you know where it is. Pull it out. Make sure the gauge is good. And if you think it's past its prime, just go to Home Depot and buy one wherever. They're very inexpensive and they're great to have.
is it okay, or should you like test one out? Some like I've never
Yeah,
actually used a
it's
small.
a small dry chem. You can't really test them because once you discharge it, it's like a one shot usage.
Right.
Um, if you had a water can, that can be tested and then recharged, but
Hmm.
not many people have them in their homes.
How many fires? I was like, I know, like when I'm, and this is basic, but this is, I guess, the practical question is like, whenever I'm cooking, there are times when like the flames from our gas stove will kind of lap over the pan and
Yeah.
they get into the oil, and that's when you'll see like kind of flames shoot up. Um, like how my wife Christy will freak out when she sees that. I usually just figure I just got to keep pull it off of it and it'll be okay. But like, how many fires that you see are like kitchen fires from somebody like cooking, and
Well,
how irresponsible am I being when I do that?
kitchens are the number one spot for any fire to start. Period.
Really?
That's by far way above. I forget the numbers, but 30 or 40% are probably kitchen related. And most of our fires are in residential buildings anyway, um, just because of the sheer numbers. But so if you have a grease fire like that going, a box of baking soda
Hmm.
standby, just dump that on it. That'll put it out. Try to get the lid on top of it. That'll get it out. The main thing
Hmm.
is the main thing is do not freak out.
Right.
Take a deep breath. Get the pot cover
Right.
with maybe with the mitt. Don't do it barehanded. Try to have
Mm.
long sleeve on and just put the cover over the top. It'll shut it right down. Just I told you before about closing the door. It's the same
Yeah.
thing,
Same thing.
same concept. Try to get that over it. So like if you're cooking that grease, whatever the top to that pot, that frying pan is, have it off to the side. Like have it red. Don't have it in tucked away down underneath and you don't know where it is. Have it ready to go. It's that simple. You just take it, put it on top, and you're good. Let it cool down. The one thing you do not want to do is put water on it or try to move it over to the sink. Don't do either of those things.
Okay.
Leave it where it is. Just get it covered. You can
I
if you wet a towel, and well, I wouldn't even wet a towel. Just a regular towel, dropped it over, probably would work. I like the
Mhm.
pot better though.
Okay. Well, I usually end up just lowering the burner and moving it
Right?
away
Yeah.
from
Turn
the
and
flame.
absolutely turn the burner off. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I try not to freak out. So,
Don't
all right,
freak
well,
out.
good. I'm glad.
That's the main thing. Take a deep breath.
um, do like have you like have you had any situations where you felt like your life was in like danger,
Well,
like
I mean,
really
other
scary
we won't,
experiences?
we don't have to go into it, but certainly
No.
September 11th would be one of
Yeah.
those.
Right.
But other than that, there's been a few times I was like, oh, this is not good. But again, we go through a lot of training, and we know the creature we're up against, and that, and by the way, it's not a creature. All right, it's not a living, breathing thing. Even though in the movie Backdraft, that would be the impression you would get from fire. I think De Niro does his scene with one of the Baldwin boys, with Billy Baldwin, and he's, Brian, the fire doesn't go up the wall and across the ceiling due to the physics of combustible liquids. It does it because it wants to. Okay, complete nonsense. Okay, it's an inanimate object that reacts to the physical world around it. When you understand that physical world and fire dynamics, you can control it to some degree.
Right. So you understand it in a way that civilians don't.
Correct.
It has some predictability, not that, but also that it can probably get out of control as well as probably one of the predictable elements to it.
And that's why, as an officer, I'm looking out for that. My firefighters are all trained to some degree to look out for that. That's why we have a layer of command. We have a battalion chief that comes in, and he is overseeing the larger picture. There's another battalion chief that comes in, that goes into the building, and he's looking at the bigger picture. And then there's a deputy chief that comes in and checks in with the first chief, and then backs up and says to himself, okay, where's this going in 10 minutes? So we have a multi-layer command presence that is trying to mitigate that emergency.
So when I hear on the news something about being a 2-alarm, 3-alarm, 4-alarm fire, what does that mean?
It's just resources.
So it means more than one fire station.
Yeah, so there's an all hands, which is that's just off the top of my head, I would say it's probably 4 engines, 3 truck companies, squad and a rescue, and a 1075 chief, right? And then the second, then it goes from that to a second alarm. Second alarm is called immediately when we see fire going from one building to another, or we see fire going out a window of a high rise. Second alarm. We just kind of know from past history, we're going to need a lot more resources for this situation. And so instead of a chief going, okay, I have 5 engines. Okay, give me 3 engines, 2 trucks, another, it'd be too hard. So he just says second alarm, dispatch already has the playbook. Bam, second alarm, send them, Bam, second alarm, high rise, multiple dwelling. Bam, we send these units. Second alarm, 1076, which is a commercial building on fire. We need more resources, bigger building, more areas to search, more companies that need to be relieved. So that's what that all goes into.
How, when you have a host team or whatever the phrase would be that goes in, like how long can they be in before they have to be relieved?
So in a good firefight, you can expect an engine. You can expect just about any company to operate for about 5 to 10 minutes tops. That's it. And that's because the gear we wear, the same way it protects against the thermal threat of the fire, it's also keeping the heat inside our bodies. And the number one, thing that drops you, if you've ever had heat stroke or anything like that in a summer day running or whatever, you just shut down. And we can't let our people get to the shutdown before we get them out of there, because then they're a problem. Now we got to get them out, which takes more resources to get them out than we have available right now. So the trick is to know when time to say, all right, good job. You knocked the fire down. You're coming out. We'll send another engine in. They'll finish up. And the truck company, you're done too. We're going to send another company in. And we start. That's one reason. Sometimes you're leaving here. The chief say, box 807, we're going to go to a third alarm for relief purposes only. In other words, we have the fire in check. We're moving in a good direction, but I know I need more resources. So give me a third alarm assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Do that.
And then if you have, so some guys are going in, do you have another hose go in alongside them and then they leave? Or do you have to, does somebody have to pull out before somebody else goes in?
Line. Mm-hmm. You always try to back a line up. But there are times at a fire when you just need lines operating remotely from each other as quickly as possible. So it's not like I can stretch one line here and operate and then bring another line to backup, but then I need a third line over here and there's
Right.
no third engine here. No, then
Right.
this may go to deal with that. Then we'll stretch another line to back up either one of those.
Okay.
We're always
All
trying
right.
to, it's always a multi-layered
Okay.
safety issue.
And you've mentioned like ladder companies, engine companies, rescue. Like, what do all those terms mean?
So in the city of New York, we have 197 engine companies. So they are the ones you see out there that have hose on the back of their rigs, right? Then we have, I believe the number is 143 truck companies. And those are the ones that have the ladder up top. Either a tower ladder, which like we better know as a cherry picker, or just a stick, just a ladder that extends out. Then there are 8 squad companies that are engine based, but trained to like the rescue level. And then there are 5 rescue companies. So putting them all together, you end up with, at a fire, you're going to get, 3 engines, 2 trucks, a squad, and a rescue at every fire. And then as those alarms go up, you're going to add engine and ladder companies. You may occasionally add a rescue, and a chief can always ask for extra equipment. So if he thinks he wants a second squad there, he can call that. And then again, he doesn't have to say, I want squad such and such. He just says, whatever box this is, 807, right? Because in the city, the whole city's gridded out in box numbers. And that box number at dispatch, they know who the next squad or rescue should be on that box. Or it's automatic.
Okay. And then what does the rescue company do?
Rescue is a large box of tools, rolling tools that basically are every tool that engines, ladders don't have, and some tools squads don't have. And that's what we bring. And then we bring members who are more senior to other members. So most of my members are like 10 years or more in the company. So they're much more experienced than most companies. And then they have all these tools that those companies don't have that may be needed at that moment. Getting through a wall, cutting something, whatever, lifting something.
So it's more about like the kind of the structural aspects to support the firefighting.
We call it technical rescue. So
Right.
any
So,
technical rescue
so
could
some
be
kid gets go on.
could be a ring caught on a finger. We go
Okay.
to emergency rooms all the time because they don't
Yeah.
have the ability to cut the metal like we do. So we do that on a regular basis. You know, kid gets caught in a swing in the playground. It happens all the time, and we go and have to cut them out of that, and that's always precarious. Kids
Yeah. No.
screaming and scared, and whatever.
And then car crashes just because like you have to
And then, yeah,
cut
then all
somebody
the
out.
extrications. But again, on extrications, the regular truck companies have the ability to work on these cars and to get doors open and everything. However, we bring tools that are more powerful than their tools. So if they can't get it, we should be able to get it.
So what's it like when you're like going through traffic? I mean, like you take it for granted as a civilian driving around in your car that okay, here a siren, whatever. But like the fire, I mean, like, it seems really dangerous. You've got lights and you've got noise, but like going through traffic is do you how
Well,
does that feel though when
rule
you're in
number
the truck?
one is if you get into an accident, you can't just keep going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if there's someone injured. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
the trick is you can't get to the emergency and do good if you don't get there. So it's imperative that our truck chauffeurs that are driving, we call them chauffeurs, right? Just for lack of a better terminology. They have to know I have to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, but I can't just blow through a red light. I have to make sure everyone else knows I need to get through this red light, right? So lights, sirens, air horns. And then you have to be careful.
Yeah. You can't.
When
You're
you get
just
into
not
an
going
accident,
headlong.
yeah, when you get into an accident, you got to call dispatch and say, we're not coming. Send someone else, and for a rescue company, that could be devastating. My guys go, they go with a purpose, but they're very smart at what they do. You just
And
don't blow through red lights. You just can't.
given the unavoidable traffic that's in New York City, is it maddening to get through traffic, or do you usually
Can
find
be.
like you
It can be, but what are you going to do?
right?
Though, for those of us that remember Bugs Bunny cartoons, which were made in the 40s, okay?
Hmm.
You ever remember them when they showed what Manhattan looked like? It was all gridlocked. You
Hmm.
know, that's what they showed of the car. So traffic has been going on in Manhattan forever.
Right. You can only go as fast as you can go.
You always go as fast as you can go. That's it.
Yeah. Wow.
We do the best we can.
And do you ever, so for as far as training, and Christy asked me to ask this question. She had one other from her, but like with your training is either in the classroom, talking through things. Do you guys ever go? I mean, or maybe you running some drills. Do you ever go fight fires at that rosin facility or other places where you're getting more real time, or is that really the training is just like in real life?
So yeah, our training New York City Fire Department is on the streets of New York. I mean, that's the best training you could ever get. But we at our Randall's Island facility. I don't go out to Roslyn. I'm not a volunteer anymore, so I don't go out there anymore or Bethpage. But we have a huge, fantastic training facility on Randall's Island. Right across from 125th Street, Manhattan, and we get fires going there that are relatively close to what you would experience out in the field. You could never make them exactly the same for a number of reasons. By law, you're not allowed to. You can't. I can't take a sofa and put it into a training building, light it on fire, and tell them go put it out. We don't do that. That's how people get killed. People have gotten killed in training. So there's an NFPA regulation. I told you about regulations before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Regulation 1403 that says how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to understand what you're burning and its burning characteristics and how much you can burn and whatnot. And we'll play around with it a little bit and try to stifle it down a bit and create more smoke so that it becomes that way. But to get to the heat levels that you're gonna get at a real fire, you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Too dangerous. So,
Right.
but we will have our companies go out there and do what they have to do, and you know learn, and then they critique after. And we're always doing that with companies all the time.
You talked about the camaraderie, and like I think having, for me, I've been in the Navy, I was a lawyer, I've been in a number of different careers, and there's definitely, at least to me, what I found like when the Navy was, there's something about, I guess, the shared suffering and the shared risk and the intimacy and being in close confine. Like there seems to be something there that I think is utterly lacking in like the white collar world. The sense of like camaraderie almost doesn't exist. Although I think when you're a lawyer working 100-hour weeks, you start getting some of that camaraderie. But is how does that camaraderie develop? And I mean, is everybody kind of like coming from the same backgrounds, or is it kind of like there's a mix of different people and it's that shared experience that just kind of brings you together?
So part of I can talk about this on a lot of levels. It's very, obviously we as humans, get into the whole tribal thing, and that happens just about everywhere. Obviously, your Navy experiences, it would exactly be very similar. You have a shared experience. You're on a ship, and everyone's performance is part of why you can do what you can do. Get in position, whatever. I'm not sure what ship you were on, but whatever your mission statement is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone together is what makes that mission doable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing with the fire department. I think there's probably something about someone that goes into the service, right? They want to serve. I mean, yeah, maybe you're going there because you're looking to get to your college, through the GI Bill or whatever. There's another motive there, but the bottom line is you're serving your country, And I think we in the New York City Fire Department, you're serving the citizens of New York, and that's the underlying realm. So the person who wants to serve, I think, is the start of that foundation of what comes to New York City Fire Department. I think we also get the people that want to challenge. So that type A personality, that wants to, put their best foot forward as opposed to letting things come to them. they want to, kind of attack the world, so to speak. So I think we
Mhm.
get those types. My job as a captain of a company is to build that company with all people that are like-minded. They don't have to be alike, but they have to be like-minded. And that means that the company comes before you. So everything from what you say on the street, how you conduct yourself, how you look, all reflects upon the company.
Mhm.
So you have to keep that. What you do on duty and what you do off duty reflects on the company. If a guy gets arrested in my company, good chance he's probably out of the company.
Mhm.
Whatever the arrest is for, whatever it may be, he has to realize that what he does off duty matters to what the company is professing. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be fired. Depends if he's convicted of a felony, you're getting fired. But it matters what you do on and off duty. So
Yeah.
that's all part of that team building, you know, um, and it's very much sports oriented. In fact, what I mentioned to you before about taking a deep breath is all about that. It's all about that sports mentality. Right? It doesn't matter if you're trying to score a goal or trying to put a fire out or trying to launch a guided missile. Like there's a mission there, and it's all everyone coming together for a common cause, a common good. I think that's what fuels a lot of what. That's why I like going to work. When I get to work, I'm like, excellent. I don't have to worry about a guy. Like I don't have to worry about anybody in Rescue One not going into a fire building. But there probably are some engine companies and truck companies out there that do, because there are some people that maybe this job is not the best for them. However, everyone has an opportunity to come on the New York City Fire Department. That's what civil service is all about. If you go back and look at the formation of the civil service, it was all because of Tammany Hall was saying, "Hey, my cousin Joey wants to be a fireman." Hey, my cousin Louie wants to be a cop. And all my female cousins aren't getting jobs, and that's what Tammany Hall was doing. So civil service was a way to get away from that. Say, no, you're taking a test, you're coming on this job, and then you're going to be. There's a standard there, and we have regulations. And if you adhere to these regulations, you're good. If you don't, you're not good.
Right.
We have evaluations. We evaluate all our people. And if someone's problematic over and over and over, they get a sit down. And after the sit down, if they still don't get fixed, they could get fired. It's rare. Nobody wants to hurt anyone. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to take someone's career away. But if you're not doing your job, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about it a little further, like one of the things that would be in common between the military, what you do, police officers, and I'm sure there are other professions, but is that the idea that sometimes like everybody is important. Like I think you realize the dependence you have, and like when I think in the Navy, it's like the ship could sink because the most junior sailor forgot to shut a door when there was some flooding one compartment, or when you're fighting a fire on the ship. And I think what I think is lost people that a lot of people have lost sight in, if you're not in those worlds, like if you're in that like white collar world, is it's kind of very transactional. It's very just like, I'm going to take a job, I'm going to get paid, and I just got to like worry about myself. And there's no real kind of sense of like your dependence on that cleaning lady who comes in later in the day, or all the other jobs that kind of feed into it. It's a lot more kind of atomized. And I think that's at least what I felt with the Navy, was you realize that you got to respect everybody. There's ranks and there's people that are got to do different things, but there's a shared dependence.
There's in my company, I would say, like, there's each individual kind of brings a something special. You know what I mean? So I have the guys that if I tell them, see that brick wall, just run through that brick wall. They're going to run right through that brick wall, right? Then there's other guys that I'll say, listen, we want to evaluate this new tool. I want you to be the lead on it, and just tell me what you think and put it through his paces. And that individual would be the guy that go to the computer and he'll bring up an Excel sheet and he'll put together an evaluation form, and then he'll stay on top of that schedule of, okay, each Monday we're going to test this thing, and it'll be different groups. And then at the end of that month, he'll come to me and say, listen, I did all these groups on these days, and some guys are really good at that, and other guy wouldn't be good at that. But that evaluation is just as important as getting through that brick wall. because the tool may be the one that gets us through the brick wall a little bit quicker, whatever. So you know what I mean. So they all bring things. We have the guys that are are humorists in the kitchen. There's some guys that are really good at it. There's some guys that are terrible at it. And so they add to the firehouse, because now I'll come into work at 5 o'clock and they're just in the kitchen laughing and carrying on and breaking each brother's chops and stuff like that. But that lets me know, okay, because that means they're getting along. If you go in there and everyone's on their phone, each corner, that's not good.
Right.
Right? I really think our world of remote, and we're remote right now, remote, working is the companies that bring people back, and the synergistic effect of humans being together, are going to have an advantage over those that stay remote. I think you're going to see that. It might take a couple of years for that to shake out, but I think you're going to see that, because I think humans are not meant to be in silos doing work. Now, one day a week, maybe you will be, maybe by doing that, you would be more productive in the week. And of course, depending on whatever the job is. But I do think people coming together is key.
Yeah, absolutely. From what I've gathered, I think the problem ends up being more that in the corporate world, that the corporations themselves added so little value to being together. So they were already in silos. It just they were in the same office, but there's no, like, if you talk to people who work in like corporate America, I really like, you might see the party line in commercials, and like the people in the higher levels might really feel some kind of passion for what they're saying, or just have to say it. But I think in the lower levels, like, people don't really care. There's no, like, you're not vested in your bank or your consulting company. Nobody's like kind of like really rah 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 for it. It's a job.
Yep.
And I think that the corporate world has only kind of exacerbated that and siloed people. They just happen to be in the same space. So I think for the well-being of those who aren't in like the server, like in like your civil service world, hopefully the companies kind of realize that they need to kind of, I think, build that camaraderie as well. You can't just kind of talk the talk, and you can't just, it's not just about paychecks.
Well, I'm
There's
sure
something
Google's
more at
doing
stake.
that. I know Mike Bloomberg, when he was mayor of New York, he basically, didn't have an office. He made it the corporate floor, but open cubicles,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that everyone could see each other.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I thought he was a very good mayor. So he obviously did something right. Did something
So
well.
do you see like your colleagues outside of like work, or is it just like in TV shows, like you'll watch it and it's like they're always all together, and maybe that's true, maybe that isn't, but what's it like in reality?
Yeah. So as an officer, we're a little bit removed from the members, but we have a fishing trip coming up, and we'll all go fishing together and have a hoot. A bunch of guys. One of our members just retired, and he planned. It was kind of planned in coordinates with that, but they went down to Nashville, Tennessee. About at least maybe 12 or 14 of the members of the company went down for a couple of days and had a good old time together. So that's great. So yeah, we do a lot of things. A lot of the guys get together with their wives and go out to dinner and things like that. So they do all those things, and yeah, that all helps. We had a dinner dance about 6 or 8 months ago, and what it was is one of the senior men came to me and said, "Hey, Cap, the ladies, the wives don't know each other, because I got there and then COVID hit, so we haven't had any of these events." And I said, "That's a good point. I didn't even think of that. So they had this, not a big deal, but we just had a little buffet and drinks at a local place, and it was fantastic. The girls got to know each other, and they exchanged numbers, and now if something bad happens in our company, the girls are able to talk to each other and say, what do you need, da 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 da, and again, that builds on that community. So
Yeah.
all
Are
good.
the people in your company, are they like from all over? Are they more like from the city,
We,
more
we
the
have we
suburbs,
have a
more?
number that live in the city, like myself, and then most of them live either out on Long Island, upstate New York, or Staten Island.
Hmm.
And I'm calling Staten Island not one of the boroughs.
um,
I'm open.
do you think that's a does that make a difference one way or the other? Like if you have firefighters not from the city
You know,
versus
I would like to have a mix. I think if you have too many people not from the city, you lose that personal touch. Like they're coming to work, like you kind of said, like this is just a job. Like I'm not connected to New York City. You need to be connected to New York City, in my opinion, to do a better job. I think. Right. Not to say those that live outside the city don't care about the city, but they don't. I don't think they care about the way I care about it. It matters to me what happens right here in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You know, and if I see something I don't like, I let someone know.
Yeah. Well, I think there's to me like in the working world, one of the things that's different than like what you do, like I think I find the corporate world, the really civilian world, is that almost everything is you get people to do things with pay. Only that, like even in sales, it's like, oh, do this because we're going to pay you more to do it. And what I found a bit frustrating is I'm like, you know what? Why does it always have to be about money? Why can't it be about like something like a higher purpose? And what you're saying is that sometimes maybe it to have that connection to New York City just makes you that much more emotionally vested in being aware and pushing whatever needs to be done to accomplish the mission.
So double-edged sword, right? We are a capitalist society. The capitalist society did create the strength of America. I think there's other components to it,
Yeah.
but like anything in life, I think you need to have a balance. You know what I mean? And so we all have to make a good living. We all have to make money. It's expensive to live in New York City. We know all that. All right. But you still have to have a balance there. And if you can find um, that job or that career that you can have both, you can make a good salary and you have that connection and that other um, aspect of humanity. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Sometimes hard to do,
Yeah.
you know.
Is there anything that you wish people like civilians did understand about firefighters that they don't understand now?
Um, well, that's a great question. No, I mean, listen, it's a job. I think people just realize we're doing the best we can. Um, there are times that I think sometimes our members don't handle the situation the best way they should, and sometimes I think civilians don't. We just went to a really terrible accident right at 7th and 43rd Street. An e-scooter, an e-bike, almost like a motorcycle, hit a young girl who was like vacationing in New York City. It was terrible, and I you had to show humanity there because there was a 17-year-old girl who had major face trauma and didn't deserve it. Had no fault of her own. This individual on this electric bike was just went through a red light and just blasted her. And so you have to, in that moment, yeah, I can, you know, do my job at EMS and I put a firefighter on her and we try to get ice on her and we try to, calm her down best we can. But then I pulled the parents aside and told them that, you got to take a deep breath. You need to be here for your daughter right now. And then I told them to do a bunch of things like get all the information from the police officers, get the police officers' badge numbers, tell them you want the cameras in that intersection looked at because this is like a criminal case, really, really what it was. This kid should have been arrested. It was that bad, that egregious a situation. I doubt he was. And unfortunately, I hope that family had health insurance because this girl's going to need coverage for a long time. And I doubt the individual on the bike had any insurance. So what do you do?
Right.
Tough, really, really tough. So, and that's a whole nother problem in the city is the e-bikes. It's, they're not insured. I don't even think this kid was working. He wasn't delivering anything. So he's not even working for a company. So
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah, you got all those city bikes too. The city e-bikes,
You
they,
really
they
got to be
feed that.
careful.
Yeah.
You really got to
Yeah.
be careful out there. Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell the kids when they go out, I was like, no one in the history of humanity has ever intended to have an accident.
That's right.
I
That's why
was
it's
like,
called an
so
accident.
you always have to be careful. You got to assume, and it's you're not always going to do it. Like I tell all of them, like, you stay out of the gray zone as much as possible, because sometimes you're going to be in the gray zone despite your best efforts. So
Yeah.
you gotta be aware. So, and the last question on my mind was, like, I in this show we've been watching 911, and but you see something like, people drop off like cookies or something. Is there a way for, like, is there a way for the community to kind of show its appreciation for the fire, how, fire department, their local fire
Yes.
department?
Yes. The Little Pie Company is on 43rd Street between Ninth and 10th. So no, so we're very lucky. Um, we have people that come park at our firehouse from time to time, as
Mhm.
well as we have the neighbors. Like, neighbors just drop things off with a note and say thank you for what you do.
Mhm.
And it might be cookies, it might be pecan pie, whatever. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
you listen. The firehouse, our kitchens. We spend a lot of time in our kitchen, so
Mhm.
certainly having a little nice pastry or something, after a hard day's tour or whatever, is always very nice. So we always have great coffee at Rescue One. Most firehouses have good coffee, and good coffee and a nice cannoli, right? Is always a wonderful thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do
you can
do you
always do that.
in the military they prohibit alcohol?
Huh?
Is alcohol prohibited at a fire station, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That there was a time when that was not the case, but that's
Mhm.
not how it is now.
Yeah.
My personal feeling, even you don't even go to a picnic now and drink and then go to work with some alcohol in your bloodstream, because if you get tested, you're in trouble, right? They
Yeah.
just marijuana is legal in the state now, so now you're off duty. You could partake in that, but you can't on duty. So
Mm.
if you were to do it on duty and the officer thinks you're stoned, he will call the medical office.
Mhm.
So there's none of that going on.
Yeah.
That's really taboo.
Stay out of the gray zone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another great zone.
All right.
Well, think
All
about it.
right. Yeah.
There's no way you could operate even with a beer or two in you
Yeah.
as effectively as a fire service.
Yeah.
No way.
You need that edge. Even, that's still
Exactly.
just a
You have to
small
be
degradation.
right. Exactly. You need to be as sharp as you possibly can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why
All right.
CBD is good. I didn't take mine today. Actually, I have to as
I
soon as I
haven't I
get done.
haven't had to resort to any CBD yet.
It's good.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was concerned because of the residual. There's a potential residual there, but I don't know. It seems to help with inflammation and aches and pains. It seems to be pretty interesting. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Next flare up I have
there you go.
on the back. So, well, I should let you get going, but I guess before I wrap up the podcast, I just like to ask, like, what gives you hope at the end of the day?
Oh, listen. The vast majority of people in the world are good. That's all I need to know. And the way I interact with people on duty, well, even off duty, is you'll always get the benefit of the doubt. Shot one. If you ruin that shot, then you'll get the appropriate response from me after that. But initially, I treat everyone with respect and do the right thing. And I think most people, it's very interesting. Um, just walking the streets of New York, you see so many different people and everything. And I watch on the subways. Like, it's actually written in our regulations, the FDNY regulations. If you're in uniform, you have to get up for a woman on a bus or a subway. It's written in the regulations. And so I watch, and I'll always get up, or at least I'll catch eye contact and say, would you like to sit down? And maybe they'll say no. But, if it's an elderly woman or something, absolutely, get up and give her a seat. And I watch other people that do it. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes a lot of young people don't, but then I see young people that do. And I see other men that do, or hold doors open or do the right thing. So, as crazy as the world can be, and as crazy as New York City can be, there's still the vast majority of people are good people. And that's why, I think the sun still comes up every morning and goes down at night. And that's why it always looks good to look for the next day, because there are all these good things. Even when bad things happen, there's good things on the other side of it. So life
Yeah.
is not meant to be easy. Not. I mean, you go back to the Stoics of Greek, Greek philosophy. Like they talk about struggle all the time, because once you realize life is a struggle, it's no longer a struggle. This is the way it's supposed to be. Every day's not supposed to be perfect. It's how you navigate through there that I don't know. I find interesting and challenging, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll put you on my speed dial next time I'm having one of those days.
There you go. Exactly.
So,
Well, you always got to remember too. Someone always is having a worse day than you.
mhm.
Right? I can remember the first sprint triathlon I ever did. I had been practicing and swimming. I taught myself how to really swim properly and breathe properly. I never did that as a kid. You swam. I was a good swimmer, but not, where you have to go like a mile in the water. I get in the water and whistle goes off and into the water, and they're taking off and I'm going, and all of a sudden I'm taking in water, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not going to be able to do this, because I know the first pylon is still way out there. And then I turned and looked behind me, and there were people behind me. They were having a worse swim than I was. So just shut up, put your head in the water, and do one stroke at a time, and you'll get there. And that's exactly what I did. I got a little rhythm going, and then I was good. And then that never happened again. My next, sprint, I did better. And the next one I did better than that. And it just kind of builds on itself. But always know, whatever's going on, someone's having a worse day than you.
Yeah, that's great. It's very true. All right, John. Well, thank you so much for this. It's been a real pleasure, and I appreciate the chance to learn a lot more about what you're up to. And I'm sure there's a lot more we haven't covered. But thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thank you to all the listeners and viewers out there. May you go out and explore our country with curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility. All right. Thank you, John. Have a good day.
Remember, close the door. Bye-bye.
Bye.